Hello, everyone. My name is Rose. I'm here with Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And today I'm just going to do a very short and simple craft. I'm going to teach you how to make some tassels and some pom-poms, tassels like this and pom-poms, and show you a couple different ways that you can combine the two to make some keychains, maybe add some beads, etc., like this. This is considered an adult craft, but I like it because it's very adaptable and children can get involved with some of the wrapping of the yarn. And I also like it because it's a great way to use up your yarn scraps. If you knit or crochet or weave, you often have a lot of yarn pieces left over, and this is a great way to just use up some of those scraps. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I hope you enjoy. Go ahead and if you want to follow along, grab a scissors if you can. If you have pieces of cardboard or a rectangular book, that will help you. And also 2 toilet paper rolls. We'll show you how to use this in just a minute. And then whatever accessories you have, like some beads or keychains, if you want to make this into a keychain, or if you wanted to have some fishing wire or string and wanted to string them along and make a garland, whatever it is that you would like. So I'm going to start with a simple tassel. I'm going to use, first I'm going to start with embroidery thread. You can use a lot of different types of things, even string, thick yarn, thin yarn, whatever it is that you have. It just depends on what type of thing you want to make. And right now I'm just going to show you how you can make a tassel using some embroidery thread. So first I have to make sure this isn't too tangled. And then I'm going to start with the end. And I just use a piece of cardboard to wrap it around. So the best thing to do is to start, make sure you start near the bottom so that it's the same length as what the other threads are going to be. And I'm holding it, you can see on the back. And then I'm just going to start wrapping it around. This is not an exact science. It does not need to be perfect. Try to keep hold of the end, unlike me. And I think just to change it up a little bit, I'm going to go to another color. So try to cut it off near the end so that it's even. See, I just cut it off there. And now I'm going to add some yellow. I think when you want to combine colors, it's probably best to continue to use the same type of material. So I'm still using just some embroidery thread or embroidery floss. That's what you call it. So I'm gonna just kind of lay this on top of it to thicken it rather than continuing across. It's always fun to combine colors, especially if you have a favorite football team or baseball team. This would be a fun little way to make a little symbol of them to add to your keychain or your school colors if you're in school. So I think that's good for now. Again, I'm going to cut it off at the end here. It's fairly even. Excuse me. So depending on how tightly that you do this, you can either take the yarn off now before you cut it, or you can cut it first. For this one, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it first. Get under all on one side. Try to get close to the bottom as you can. Go ahead and cut. So now we have the beginnings of a purple and yellow tassel. Next, I'm going to take some purple and yellow again, just to keep going with the two colors. I'm gonna need 2 strings, so 4 strands total. So I'm gonna cut these. Just wanted them to be the same size. I'll lay them aside there. Let's see if I can get 2 more out of these tangled pieces. This is what happens when you use scraps. That's okay. And then we'll cut it here. So one is going to be used as a loop like this. You put it in the middle and you loop it up top. Try to make sure you keep the different strands centered. And then I'm just going to tie it off, just in a traditional knot. I know a lot of people like to use different types of knots, especially people who are more professional crafters. You can use whatever type of knot works best for you. All right, so I have that secured nicely. Give it its first little shaky to kind of even things out. I can comb it with my fingers as well. Now, to make it into a tassel, you need to tie it off and have the little gathered portion on the top. Now, sometimes instead of, you see where it's already split, that's an obvious place to tie it on the 2 sides, but sometimes it's best to kind of spread it out first so that it doesn't look too cut in half. So kind of refolded it in the middle. So I'm gonna do it like this. That way it looks just a lot more integrated. And this, I'm not gonna tie right away. I'm gonna wrap it around just a couple times because I like how it looks. And you know, you could, if you wanted to, use a different color to wrap it to add some more color. Like if you had done a single color tassel, you can use another single complementary color. And I'm just tying this off like this. And because I'm using the same color, it's going to be very easy to kind of just integrate into the rest of the tassel. I'm going to comb this out a little bit, and the last thing I need to do is trim it. Oftentimes when you cut it, it's not going to be perfectly even, but you can just trim it right at the end once you have it tied. So here you have our first tassel, purple and gold, and I can show you a couple of different ways to attach that. So I have these keychains. I have ones like this. These are a little bit harder. I would just tie with a knot. I would tie with a knot with both of these, and sometimes people like to use these keychains together like this. Like this. And then I kind of wanted to use a bead. I actually have a yellow bead, I see. So let me see if I can use this bead. And can I get these strings in here? I need my trusty yarn needle. It's small enough. No. Just do it like this. Uh-oh, I might have to pick a different bead. Well, in an ideal world, I would have used that bead. If you have a regular needle, you can use smaller beads. But if you don't, you can use these bigger beads. If it wants to cooperate. So I think what I should do is twist these two together since they don't want to cooperate. That's fine. So what happens when you use two different colors, you end up with 4 strings instead of 2. And now I have a bit of a thick strand to attach to the keychain. But if you don't have a bead, looks like I don't have a bead that's gonna work either. Anyways, an easy way to tie on would just be tying it on here. And if you want, you can kind of loop through the inside of your tassel so that you have kind of a hidden entrance. Don't worry, you can smooth it back afterwards. There we go. It's attached nicely like this. Just tighten that. And then before I tighten it all the way, I'm just going to go through one more time to make a knot. Then I'll knot this off. Try to get as close as possible. And then I'll just trim. So here's a little simple keychain. Easy to attach to your keys. Let me go ahead and show you tassel with longer thread that's a different texture. I'm going to use green, and instead of using the cardboard this way, I'm going to turn it like this and make a longer tassel. You can always get some length first. And like I did before, I'm going to make sure I start all the way at the bottom. And then I will just wrap it around like this. This is a wool yarn and it's a lot stiffer. So it's going to turn out a bit different than the one I used before. You just have to experiment with what you have and see how it turns out. I do think that this type of yarn is closer to string and that it would probably last a little bit longer. It's just a little bit sturdier if you're going to have it like on a keychain out in the world. We're going to cut it off at the bottom. And this one, I'm going to try pulling it off before tying it off, before cutting it. Let's see how that works. Oh, a little rough. Did it survive? It did. So now you have this kind of loop. And I'm going to cut off some string to tie it off on the top as usual. And I'm going to do it like this. I'll do a loop this way. It's where you take the two ends and you loop it through like this. And I'm going to hold this flat so that nothing moves. And I will tighten the loop. And then to make sure it's secure, I'm going to tie a knot in the two sides. There we go. And what do we need to do next? Well, should we cut it first or should we tie it off first? We should cut it first because otherwise I think that the shape could change a little bit after you tie it off. So make sure everything is as long as it can be. And then go all the way to the end. Hold it kind of taut so that you're not losing any length, and just cut. Give it a little shaky and comb it. It might be useful to have something like a fork to comb your threads sometimes. It's just a little hint. All right, that looks good. And I'm just going to use the same color again. Sticking with green today. And again, instead of just doing it like this, it's best to turn it one way and kind of try to integrate it a little bit before you tie it off. Yeah, that's going to look a little bit better. This would also be great to put on a gift. Kind of a natural look. I'm going to wrap this a little bit. Just because I like how the wrapping looks. Makes it look a little bit neater. And now I will tie this off. When it's the same color, it's very easy to just hide the short ropes that this is going to create. It's one benefit. I'm going to tie a knot just to make sure it's secure. And I think instead of cutting this off very short and leaving two little stubs, it's easiest just to pull these down a little bit and kind of hide them within the rest of the tassel. All right, and the last thing I need to do is trim, make it even. Doesn't have to be perfectly even, but what you definitely don't want are long ends hanging off. Those are the most obvious. There we go. Voila. And now we have a green tassel. So this one, I think I'm going to set aside and later I can show you how to attach it to a pom-pom when I make one. So next I would like to show you guys how to make pom-poms. And I'm going to be using 2 toilet paper rolls. This is a really easy way to make larger fluffy pom-poms, which are the ones that I like. And you, as with tassels, it's good to kind of experiment and see which types of yarns work best for you. I found that thicker, fluffier, especially acrylic, work really well. And if I was going to use something like the floss I used earlier, that it wouldn't work as well. It's too thin. And also if I were to use something like this yarn that I made the tassel out of, this is too stiff. So you have to find something that's kind of floppy, I would say, and flexible. So I found this yarn. This is some yarn scraps from the library. So it's not in the best condition, but it's something I can work with, right? I'm going to start with this. Just really like the dark color. It's kind of a charcoaly color. It's not the most festive, but it's kind of nice. I'm going to start just with this. And the easiest way for me to hold these is just putting 2 fingers in each side and holding it like this. And then I'll use my thumb to hold the edge. So I'm just going to start wrapping the yarn around this. So with this method, the thicker you make it, the more fluffy your pom-pom will be. So it's good to make it fairly thick. That's part of that yarn scrap used. See if we can find the end of some more. I often just like to drop my yarn ball on the floor when I'm trying to unwind and wind it onto something like this, because it rolls around and it's an easy way to get it to give you more yarn continuously. It's okay that I'm using 2 separate pieces. Just gonna try to thicken this up a little bit, and then we can try to make it into a pom-pom. All right, just like when I'm making a tassel, I'm gonna cut this off. Cut it off right here. And then I'm gonna cut myself a little rope. I think this long is good, maybe about 1 foot. And then sometimes I like to stand it up, or you can do it while it's laying down. You insert this little rope between the 2 toilet paper tubes. And then you go around the top and you do the same exact thing while you're tying it. So I tied it first just to make it a little easier, and I'll let it go in. And now I'm going to take these out before I tie it very tightly. Okay, still tied, still intact, which is good because I've had a lot of pom-pom mishaps. So it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. And you need to secure the middle and make sure it's tied tightly. Otherwise, the shape of the pom-pom is just not going to work out. The more you squeeze it in the middle, the more these edges kind of fan out. So that kind of helps you have a good shape. So I'm holding it tight and I'm trying to tie a double knot. I guess this would be a good time to have a spotter or an extra finger, but if you don't, just try to do your best. So I've tied it pretty tightly in the middle. It's kind of made, it's good if it's made more of a circle rather than 2 wedges. It's kind of in a circle, and just want to make sure this is secure. Yeah. And the next thing I need to do is cut through all these loops. I'm going to hold it like this. And especially if you've made several layers, you probably won't be able to get through them all. That's totally fine. Just be patient and work yourself through the layers. When I tried to do this with some wool yarn, it just let off a lot of tiny pieces, and I was sneezing and it was very messy. So I think that acrylic yarn probably works best when it comes to trying to make pom-poms. Maybe someone else knows of a wool yarn that is a little bit more adaptable, but so far I've found that acrylic has been working the best for me. Just keep going around, finding all those little loops. Might find extra ones here and there you didn't see. I have a whole layer in here. Another layer. All right. So I like to take the ends of the rope that I used to tie it after I've cut all the connections and just give it a good shake. There you go. So now you have a good shape pom pom. It looks like a pom pom, but he needs a haircut. So let me bring my tray over so I don't make too much of a mess. And give this guy a little haircut. So I just kind of wing it at this point. But if you want to be more careful about having it be exactly even, you can cut out a cardboard circle and kind of make sure it stays the exact size of that circle. You can measure, be a little bit more precise, but I guess I kind of like the wild look of not perfect pom-poms. Especially if I'm doing this with kids, because I'm not looking for perfection. We're trying to have a little bit of fun. But I like how this is turning out. Combs to make sure there are no connections left or some really long ones just hanging around. Give it another shaky. So this one is letting off a lot of little pieces as well. I think that pom-pom making is just kind of a messy endeavor, and you have to be okay with that and hopefully own a vacuum. Yeah, I like how this one is turning out. All right, so we have a completed pom-pom. Try to clean up your area a little bit before it gets too out of hand. And here's the completed product. If you would like, there are a few different ways you can connect it to a tassel. Usually the tassel looks better on the bottom, so try to connect them kind of like this. And see some different ways to do it. You could try to loop these through, or you could use a needle. Let's see if we can use this yarn needle to connect these to each other. So for now, I'm going to have these long leftovers. I'm just going to leave them on top in case I need them to connect to the keychain. And I'm going to, I think these will cooperate a bit more with this. I'm just going to kind of sew this into the middle. And I'll bring it out the other side and tie it, hopefully. Yeah, so you have your tassel hanging down. And I'm just going to knot it after I bring it through the middle. Probably knot it 2 times for good measure and then just cut it off so it's not really showing. This is a time where you can just trim it off and have those blunt ends, and then it should be pretty much covered up by the pom-pom. Just gonna trim these ends. All right. So now I have a pom tassel. And I can attach it to a keychain. Should I try to use the bead again? Will it cooperate this time? Beads don't like me. So I could get it to there, but then what? I think having a bead maybe calls for, if you are very serious about using beads and you have them, you definitely need small needles, and using small needles and thick yarn they're not always the most fun thing, but yeah, I don't think it's going to cooperate. Well, this one is, I guess all it takes is a little bit of forcefulness with this bead. And thankfully, the good thing about these plastic yarn needles is that they can squeeze in a little bit. So I was able to squeeze it into that bead. And then, so what I should have done is created a bit of a knot down here. Let me do that so that I can see the bead. I'm not taking the bead off. It took too much to get it to stay. All right, so I have a little knot here. And let me try to get this rope through as well, just for neatness. Fingers crossed that it cooperates. Yeah. Thank you for cooperating. Yarn and needle. All right, let me pull that through so it's even. All right, so I have a little knot so that it stays, and I'll just use these to loop onto a keychain. This. I don't feel that I need the circle. I'll just make a loop knot. Cut this down a little bit so that it's even. I'm just going to make a loop like this. And I'm going to make a knot right here so that it stays. Knot it 2 times. Make sure that this stays upright. And I'll do this like knot. So this involves a lot of experimentation. I think it helps that I'm not using anything new that I bought. I'm just using yarn scraps from here and there from different projects. And I'm not too invested in it turning out perfectly. There we go. Just gonna cut those off. There we go. So now you have a series of funny little combinations of tassels and pom-poms. You can also look up how to make smaller pom-poms like this, but basically it just takes a lot more trimming and probably a thinner yarn. And combine them like this. Make just a pom-pom like this and attach it to your keychain. It's whatever you want to do, but it's easy because you have the household tools you need. Just save some toilet paper rolls to start making your pom-poms. And you can also just, every time you have some yarn scraps left over, make some pom-poms and tassels, start collecting them, and then eventually you can make it into a large garland. hope you enjoyed this simple craft, and I hope that this is a great way for you guys to use your yarn scraps. Have a great day.